Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. My name is Julian, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 6 fantasy studs that I am absolutely terrified of this year. By that, I mean that their ADPs are really high, and based on last season's stats, they should be. However, they're guys that I'm scared of actually drafting this year because of different factors that may be reducing their overall value this year, and so I'll be avoiding them personally in drafts. In my opinion, these guys are draft at your very own risk because they're going too high for my liking. Now, before we jump into this list, guys, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. More than half of you guys that watch this channel are still not subscribed. It would mean the world to me if you did hit that button, guys. And trust me, you're going to want to be subscribed. I'm putting out videos nearly every single day, if not every second day. So definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button because I've got a lot of content for you this preseason to make sure that you draft the absolute best fantasy hockey team. Let's jump into it now. And the first guy on this list is Dougie Hamilton. And yes, guys, he was an absolute stud last year, was a top 5 defenseman in every single league, right? If you guys watched my defenseman video, I had lowered him to defenseman number 7, but I said that I'm still personally not drafting him, even though I do have him pretty high. Obviously, that ceiling is insanely high, right? But the floor is pretty low, right? The reason for this, guys, is Luke Hughes. Luke Hughes is an insanely talented young defenseman coming into the league really this year. He played a tiny bit near the end of the year last year, but really this year is his coming out party. Now, if he plays really well in the training camp, they may stick Luke Hughes on that top power play over Dougie Hamilton. A lot of you guys might be saying, oh, there's no way they're going to take Dougie Hamilton off that top power play. Oh, really? Just 2 years ago, they took him off in favor of Damon Severson. So clearly they're not that scared of taking stud Dougie Hamilton off the top power play. If you remember 2 years ago, he didn't have the best season. So I'm a little bit worried that maybe something like that could happen again, and Luke Hughes could take over that top PP, and then Dougie Hamilton loses a lot of value. Personally, I'll be avoiding him, even though his ceiling is definitely still really high, and he could still definitely have an amazing season if he does keep that top power play spot. The second guy on this list is Brent Burns. Why am I terrified of drafting Brent Burns? Well, them getting Tony DeAngelo back worries me. That may mean that Brent Burns is no longer our power play 1 quarterback. And he kind of lives and dies by that top power play. If he doesn't play top power play, he doesn't have that much fantasy value, unfortunately, because that's where a lot of his points come from. Last year, Brent Burns scored 23 points on the power play. Okay, so that's a lot of points that may go down if he doesn't get that top unit. Now, why do I think DeAngelo might overtake Burns as a top power play quarterback? Because DeAngelo is a really good power play quarterback. We actually have some legitimate numbers to compare here between last year and the year before, because DeAngelo was their power play quarterback 2 years ago. So we can compare that to the power play last year, and we can see who did better. And last year, the Canes power play was 19.8%. Burns scored 23 points in 82 games, which is not bad. But the year before, the Canes power play was at 22%, which is over 2% better. And Tony DeAngelo had 3 less points, 20 points, but in just 64 games. So 18 less games, and he had only 3 less power play points. So yes, DeAngelo, in my opinion, is probably going to be the better power play quarterback. Do they actually put him there? It remains to be seen, but if they're not going to put him there, what did they get DeAngelo for? That's kind of his only real role in an offense. He's not really good at anything else but being a power play quarterback. Now, in 2019-2020, when DeAngelo broke out as a power play quarterback, the Rangers had a power play at 22.9%, which was 6th best in the league. So DeAngelo definitely has some stats to back up him being a pretty good power play quarterback in the past. And if he does overtake Brent Burns this year, Brent Burns loses a lot of value. And if you draft Brent Burns as a current ADP at 82.5 and he doesn't get the top power play, it's really not going to, he's not going to be worth that ADP, unfortunately. The next guy on this list who terrifies me is one of my favorite players in the league. Chris Letang got his jersey right behind me. And this is kind of a funny one because at his ADP, he can either be a huge bust or a huge steal. There's not really anywhere in between here. Because Chris Letang potentially loses a lot of value with Erik Karlsson joining the Penguins. If Erik Karlsson takes over as that number 1 power play defender and Chris Letang only plays power play 2, he's not going to get that power play time where he gets a lot of his points. If his points go down, his value goes down a decent amount, although he still hits quite a bit. So in hitting leagues, he's definitely still got a safe floor. but he's definitely not someone I'm excited to draft in hitting leagues at all, really, if he's not playing that top power play. So it remains to be seen in the preseason. Will Chris Letang get power play one time? If he does, it'll be both him and Karlsson on the top power play. The power play could look something like Gensel, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Erik Karlsson. With Gensel being injured for the first few games, he may initially get that top power play. You know, maybe they'll do Crosby, Malkin, Raquel, Letang, and Erik Karlsson. But when Gensel comes back, do they knock off Letang or do they knock off Raquel? It's going to be interesting to see. Now, if he does keep that top power play spot, this ADP is an absolute steal, especially in hitting leagues. He's definitely going to finish as a top 100 player. If he does not keep that top power play spot, he's going to be a pretty big bust. Although his ADP is not that early, but still not someone I'm high on drafting this year because of the risks associated. At number 4 on my list, I have Mark Stone. And obviously, Mark Stone is a stud, right? He's a really good player, just won a Stanley Cup. I have nothing bad to say about him. The reason he's on this list, though, guys, is his injury risk. He managed to stay healthy during the playoffs, and Vegas claims that he's fully healthy. However, guys, last year, during the regular season, he only played 43 games, which is more than I actually thought he played. And the year before, he only played 37 games. So he played about half a season each of the last 2 years. In my opinion, that's a really, really big risk if you're drafting him this early at 63rd overall. To me, you can get a really good player who's going to stay healthy, who's equivalently as good as Mark Stone at that range. To me, it's just too much of a risk to take Mark Stone. If you do want to take the risk, go for it. But if he does get injured, I'm sorry to say, but he's going to be a bust for you. Next guy on my list at number 5, I have Brad Marchand, and he's going at an ADP of 37.2, which normally for Brad Marchand would be a steal. The thing is, there's a lot of different factors playing in here on why he could be a real bust this season. Now, I don't think he's going to be terrible this year by any means, but that early in drafts, there's probably better options here, and this is why. Now, for one thing, the most obvious thing is he's losing Patrice Bergeron, right, who he's been playing with for many years, and obviously Bergeron is an amazing player. And while Marchand is a great player on his own, he's actually one of my favorite players in the league. Playing with Bergeron definitely helps with your numbers. This year he's probably going to be playing with Coyle or Zacha as a center, and that's definitely a big step down in quality. Now, he's still going to get top power play. He's still going to get plenty of ice time, so he's still going to do decently well. But another thing I'm concerned about is his injury. He got double hip surgery and came back pretty early in the year last year. Didn't miss too much time and did really well initially. If you guys remember last year, he really dipped off during the month of April, which was the fantasy playoffs, and he probably really hurt you if you had him on your team. He only scored 4 points within the entire month. Obviously, the month's about a half month only, but only 4 fantasy points definitely really hurt your fantasy team if you had him on it. Now, was this just him resting and not caring that much before the playoffs? It's possible. But it's also possible that, his injury with double hip surgery is kind of nagging him, and he's also getting a little bit older too, so different factors could be slowing him down this year. I hope I'm wrong. I hope after a long, restful season, he's going to have a nice rebound year. The big thing, though, that was also concerning was his lack of shots on goal. He had almost 80 less shots on goal than the year before, playing 3 more games than the year before. So that's a little bit worrisome to me. He's definitely going to have to get that shot volume back up if he wants his normal fantasy value in hockey. So if he can do that, then he's definitely probably going to be worth this ADP. But there's definitely a lot of factors that are going against him this year, and that's why I am a little bit scared of him, and that's why I'll be personally avoiding him at this ADP. And last on the list is Linus Ullmark, and obviously he just won the Vezina, had an amazing season, 40 wins and just 48 starts with an incredible .938 save percentage and .189 goals against average. Obviously, insane season, nothing against Linus Ullmark for that season. But for one thing, the Bruins season this year is not going to go that well. They had an insane amount of points last year, and just everything seemed to be going their way. This year, for one thing, their team is not as good, right? Losing Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci, their top 2 centers, definitely is going to hurt them. Plus, even if they didn't lose those 2 players, a season like that is just not repeatable. Goalies don't win 40 out of 48 games. That's just absolutely insane. I don't think there's any way that he repeats that this year. There's definitely going to be a pretty big decline, and he's only going to be starting about half the games for Boston anyway. So that also hurts, especially if you're in a points-based league. If you're in a cash league, you don't really mind too much that he only starts every second game, but in a points-based league, you want as many starts as possible. So Linus Ullmark, drafting him at 25 in the second round or third round in some leagues, it's just way too early for me. There are some really good goalies going later that might have equivalent value to Linus Ullmark. There's going to be a decent decline this year, and I really don't recommend drafting him at his current ADP. Yes, that ADP scares me very, very much. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed my content today, drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching all the way through, guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.